Hey everyone, I'm Ian Plant with Photomasters, and I am on location in Norway right now with a very talented young photographer, Christian Hoiberg. If you haven't heard of him, then you should definitely check out his work. You're going to hear a lot more about him in the future. He's got a long career ahead of him, and I'm excited to sit down with him here and talk with him about his approach to making unique artistic landscape photos. All right, Christian, welcome to Photomasters. I'm so glad to be here on location in Norway with you to have a conversation with you about landscape photography. I know it doesn't look like we're on location. We could be outside having this interview, but it's very cold, it's very dark, it's very windy. So we're here inside the hotel room having the conversation instead. So just trust me, everyone, we are on location in Lofoten, Norway. So tell me a little bit about yourself. First of all, where are you from?
I'm a Norwegian landscape photographer, originally from the east of Norway. And I have lived here in the Lofoten Islands for the last 3 years, but worked here mostly the last 5 or 6 years.
What I find fascinating is you are living in a location that is one of the biggest hotspots for landscape photography in the world. So there's many photographers that are coming here. So even though you live here, that's probably a bit of a challenge for you to find unique, compelling images because everyone is coming here and trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as one spot is found, then kind of everyone goes there. So of course, trying to get something unique from the same places as everyone goes to could be challenging. Like we do a lot of the workshops here. So of course, you know, after years of going back to the same places over and over again, typically, let's say a wide angle place, then I started to force myself to look at places differently. And then started maybe zooming in on stuff, looking at the details, looking for different elements than the main stuff. So that has been one way to try to kind of get away from the typical Lofoten scenery or what everyone sees. Of course, that is also getting quite popular now. But you can always, you know, if you start hiking, you can start finding places that are different than where everyone else goes. Maybe, I mean, other hikers go there, other tourists go there, but not so many photographers because you have to put more effort into it, maybe bring a tent, and you go into the mountains for a lot of attempts if you want to wait for the good weather, because we don't have all that much good weather here. It tends to be pretty bad.
Well, yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you're kind of trying to find a way to stay a step ahead of everyone who's coming here. And one way that you can stay a step ahead is you've got the advantage of being here when there might be breaks in the weather that allow you to get really unique lighting or really great shots of the northern lights. So maybe talk about that a little bit. You know, because I've been here for the past 2-3 weeks, and I can attest the weather here is really, really bad. And it's been very challenging because, you know, I love working with dramatic sunrise and sunset skies, and I haven't really had that many of those while I've been here. We haven't had much clear light for the northern lights, but it seems to me if you're here all the time, you can wait for those breaks in the weather, those magical moments. And I think your portfolio reflects that. You've got a lot of amazing moments from Lofoten. So do you feel like, you know, having the home court advantage is a good thing? And how do you take advantage of it so that you can really stay ahead of everyone else who's visiting?
Yeah, I think it's both a good and a bad thing. Like on one side, you know, if you're just visiting here for 1 week, you want to make the most of that week. So no matter what the weather is, you go out for the sunrise, for daytime, for sunset, for night, whatever. Like you put all your effort into creating the best possible shots from that week. But if you live here and you already have good photos from certain places, it takes more to actually get outside. So if you're sitting at home, you're doing some computer work, whatever it is, and you look out the window and it's raining, you're probably not going to go outside. If you were here for just a week, you would still go outside. Now, the difference is then if you go outside and when you're just visiting and suddenly, you know, the light appears, you get great shots. But when you live here and you're looking at the window, it's like, it's raining. I'm just going to watch Netflix tonight. And then suddenly you see the light come in the window. It's like, oh man, you know, I messed up. So that happens quite a lot. But on the other hand, like you say, like by living here and by actually being able to shoot every day, then you have the advantage of seeing all the different light. I mean, study the weather, of course, look at the weather forecast and try to believe the weather forecast. It's not always accurate, but at least you can look for those gaps and then you can make sure you're actually outside when there's something interesting about to happen. And of course, also like I love just going for a drive or going for a hike or going for a walk, whatever. And sometimes we look out, sometimes we don't. Sometimes I come home with photos, sometimes I don't come home with photos. So it's kind of like you say, by being here and being persistent and just going out as much as possible,
Mhm.
at some point you're bound to get good light. You're in the right place at the right time,
Mhm.
but you have been there so many times before that you know how to react when the light actually gets good.
Yeah. I mean, you can't always be at 100%
No.
because there's a penalty to everything. If you go out even when conditions look really, really bad, and you do that a lot, you might be tired for some other time when the conditions are actually quite good.
Yeah.
So you try to be strategic about it.
Yeah, of course.
But you're very right. Like if you are, and it's the way it always happens when you're out there and you go out and try your best, even though conditions look really bad, you just get rained on. Nothing ever happens. It's the one
Yeah.
time you decide, you know what, it looks horrible. I'm not going. That
Of
you have this
course.
magical sky. So
Always,
if you
yeah.
go, then nothing's going to happen. If you stay, that's when something's going to happen.
Yeah, of course.
So that is always challenging, and there's always that trade-off with landscape photography is figuring out when the effort is going to be rewarded and making sure that you're not too exhausted for those amazing times that when they do happen. So. But what's your strategy for making unique images? Like what's your artistic approach? How do you see the world differently from other people?
I don't know if I do. I don't know if I have a unique image. I wouldn't say that, but I don't know. Like I try to, like for me, it's not just about the outcome. It's about the experience of being in the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can gladly be just out in nature and leave the camera behind. Like if I don't have to bring the camera doesn't count.
Kind of
that's
wish you
fine.
did that more often, because then you wouldn't be, have such an amazing portfolio. So.
No, but like I don't know. Like for me, I'm trying my best to connect with a place.
Mhm.
Like I'll come to a location and I'll spend time just like sit down and enjoy it.
Mhm.
I'll look for details. I try to read the place, and at the end of the day, I'm trying to figure out what is this place trying to tell. Like what do I feel, and what do I want to convey for the people looking at this. I'm trying to kind of capture the beauty. Whatever the beauty that I see is.
The story.
The story,
The
exactly.
story of the place, yeah.
And sometimes that's like you say with bad weather. I mean, the story is bad weather.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the wind, you have the rain, you have the snow, whatever it is. That's part of the story. You can create good shots in bad weather. As long as that kind of, again, like tells something compelling, I guess.
Yeah.
I would try to get.
Yeah, so like for example, a few days ago we were out and it was gale force winds, maybe even hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
There's moments when I felt like I was going to get swept away by the wind as it was howling past me, and
Flying away.
Yeah, exactly. It was gloomy light as well, so
Yeah.
there were gray skies. And so in a situation like that, looking through your portfolio, I see that you've got a lot of shots in circumstances like that. Yet you still find a way to make it interesting and artistic. Maybe you lean into the moodiness of the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
But so when you are presented with those sort of stormy conditions and there might not be a lot of light and color, how do you approach a scene like that? Like what is it that you do different with a scene like that than you would if you had an incredible sunrise or sunset?
Well, I think again, it's about composition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a solid composition is good regardless of the light. The light is just a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So trying again to find something that leads you through the scene, and again that tells the story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have any direct light or any crazy colors, whatever it is, that's still part of the composition and part of, like you said, the moodiness of the place. Traditionally people think about something beautiful, a beach in Hawaii, something tropical. For me, the beauty is in the wildness of nature, which often tends to be more, like you said, stormy, windy, rainy, atmospheric in different ways. So it's trying to read the scene and trying to, I'm going to say, convey that part. And of course, like by living where I'm living, like that is Lofoten. Lofoten is stormy. It's not a nice, sunny, tropical place. It's the stormy, difficult place. You go outside and you feel alive. You feel like all the elements are trying to push you away and drag you away and say like, no, don't do this.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm trying to figure out how can I capture something beautiful in what is traditionally seen as something less beautiful or something too dramatic or too harsh.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of beauty in harshness. And I don't know if it makes any sense, but that's kind of what I'm trying to show.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is basically that even if you've got those really harsh weather conditions, there can be a certain mood that it helps convey in the final photograph.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that stormy look can be quite dramatic, but it's definitely a different approach. It's maybe more of a darker approach than you might have if you've got that beautiful sunrise or sunset where
Yeah.
you're looking more for the luminance and the color.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely think that comes through in your work. And it seems to me like the color balance is also a creative choice that you sometimes use.
Yeah.
One way to avoid the gray look of a cloudy day is to maybe shift the colors a little bit cooler
Yeah.
and bring in a little color that way.
Yeah, I love cold blues. Like
Mm.
again, like that's kind of what conveys this place. I'm not one for really saturated, happy colors. Sometimes I like desaturated, sad colors or moody colors. And like
Desaturated. That's
Yeah.
really great. It's sorry to interrupt, but I noticed that in your work that
Mm.
you're not really relying on color as much.
No.
You do have this sort of desaturated, almost a low contrast look, which I found very appealing and very refreshing.
Thank you.
Talk more about that.
No, again, I think it's like part of what is here, right? Like it's not a colorful place.
Mhm.
And I've never been that drawn to colorful things. Like I find beauty in the dramatic, the moody, the atmospheric.
Mhm.
So regardless if I'm here or if I'm in Spain, like that's still what I'm drawn towards. Like
Mhm.
I'm not inspired by a nice sunny day.
Mhm.
Like when I see sun, I turn into a couch. Like I just, I can't function. I start sweating and I stop functioning.
Yeah.
So like I work in difficult conditions or in fog or in, rain or in cloudy weather, whatever it is. That's where I kind of find inspiration. And then you start looking for the details. There can be a tree standing up. There is something interesting about it. It could be a path leading and it could be a wave crashing in a specific way, whatever it is. And then when you put all of those elements together and think about color, again, like, for me, it's those colder, darker, moodier colors that I find inspiring. And that's kind of what I try to put over to my work. If I'm shooting a nice, colorful sunset somewhere, I'm probably less likely to do anything with the photo because it's just not, I love watching it. I mean, I love a beautiful red sky, but it's not speaking to me in the same way as a dark, dramatic, sad sky,
Yeah, and I find that really interesting because it's in many ways the opposite of the way I approach landscape photography. So when I was looking through your portfolio, I found it very inspiring, and it forced me to seriously rethink the way I'm doing things. So that's always good, is when you meet another artist that has that different view of the world and forces you to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not doing things the right way. Maybe there's a different approach that could be really effective as well. So you mentioned Spain. Oh, sorry. Go ahead if you want to add something.
I don't think that we have like there's a right or wrong way, right? Where I look at your work and I think like, oh, that is beautiful. I'm inspired by that. But that doesn't mean that I have to go and shoot that. Like I can appreciate that you're doing that and you're creating beautiful stuff from that. As other photographers create really inspiring abstract work. And I love that and I'm inspired by that, but I'm not able to do that because the landscape or the scene doesn't speak to me in the same way as the stuff that I'm capturing. That doesn't mean that I find beauty and that I'm inspired in other stuff.
Yeah, we all see the world in a different way. And I think that's part of what makes this art so incredible, is that, you go shooting with someone else and you might have very similar styles to a point, but that person's going to notice something or see something in a much different way. And so sometimes when you have a bunch of photographers shooting from the same place, they all get the same shot. But sometimes you've got some photographers working together and they come up with different things, different ways of seeing that same scene. And I find that very refreshing and inspiring. So you mentioned Spain. So obviously you are photographing places other than just Norway. So Spain is one place that you've been. There's been a lot of other places around the world. What are some of your favorite places to photograph around the world?
Greenland is probably number one.
Oh, Greenland is fantastic.
That was like a kid dream to go there. And like when I've been able to do that several times and just, the ice and the landscape there, the remoteness of Greenland is just something that really inspires me.
Isn't it just a bunch of other fjords? I mean, like, there's fjords in Norway, fjords in Greenland. How many different ways can you see a kind of fjord look? I'm kidding.
No, but you have a point though. But I think for me, like coming kind of back to what inspires me, right? Like for me, it's that when I feel something is difficult or harsh, like when the elements are working against me, that's when I wake up and start feeling inspired. When it's just like nice and comfortable, I'm not inspired in the same way because I don't have to work for it. And in Greenland, I feel like that sense of remoteness, like you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And then again, like that inspiration starts growing. It's like, okay, I could be in the fjord of the west of Norway. Okay. But I mean, then I'm just next to my car. But here we're on an island in the middle of nowhere and we take a boat to the really middle of nowhere. And it's like that in itself is inspiring and fascinating. And makes me, excited to go out and photograph.
Yeah. Where else?
Faroe Islands,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful place. I mentioned Spain. So I lived in Spain for 2 years when I was younger.
Okay.
And that's a place that I really love exploring, especially the coast of the north, which is really, again, like dramatic seascapes. They got some really beautiful mountains.
Lots of sunny weather.
Yeah, in the summer. And then I don't photograph.
Yeah.
But no, they got really nice and dramatic and dark skies and everything like that. And they got really beautiful forests. So on a foggy day, walking on the forest, like that's probably the most amazing thing you can ever do as well. Other places, Dolomites, of course, like everyone loves the Dolomites. That's a beautiful place.
I haven't been.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you'll love it.
I hadn't been to Lofoten either
Yeah.
before this trip. And, both places I've actually kind of purposefully avoided because they've become very, very popular. And it's impossible not to shoot places that are popular to some extent. I mean, I think we all do it at points in our career, but I'm, personally drawn to some of the more off the beaten path places. So a place like Lofoten, which has been such a popular hotspot, I've just had like very little interest in going there. But now that I'm here, it's beautiful. Like any place that you go, you can find amazing things. It has been a real struggle for me, though, to find something that I feel is original. I feel like I'm just taking other people's shots while I'm here.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So you get that from my work. You can see that it's other people's shots.
No, I feel like I struggle with the same thing. And like that's coming back to like how it is to live here. Like that is one of my big struggles, is that it's hard to find something different. So when I look at my work, like I often feel like, hey, I'm not doing anything different than any other people would be doing or any other photographer is doing.
Yeah.
So I think about that all the time. Okay, where can I go away from here? Like I live in the most beautiful place in the world, but I dream away to take photos other places to create something unique.
Yeah.
Because I don't have, no-name landscapes. It's landscapes and mountains that people recognize. If I go into the forests of Spain, it could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I love that when you look at the photo and you don't care about the location. It's just, that's a beautiful photo.
Well, and I feel that looking at your work from here and other places, that in many ways, the landscape itself isn't the focus of your composition. So the landscape's there, like anyone who's been here knows what that particular mountain looks like, but it's not necessarily big and bold and prominent in your composition. Your composition's more about the interaction of the shapes of the clouds and the forms of the waves as they're crashing on the shore. So you're creating a unique composition that just happens to have a famous mountain in the background, but that's not really why you're there. You could make that composition in many other places around the world. And unless someone's really familiar with the area, they won't immediately recognize that it's from that very famous place. So I feel that like that's one way to make unique images.
I need you to talk for me more often. But so much more beautiful than I can put it.
I just summed up your artistic philosophy.
I just take photos.
Well, so the words come to me when I look at your portfolio. So that's how I interpret your work. So if there's anything else you want to say about the way you approach making these photographs, maybe talk about, are there any equipment choices that you make that allows you to see things in a unique way? Like, so for example, I'm known as being a super wide angle junkie, and that's just kind of how I interpret the world. So do you feel that you're making any equipment choices that give you a particular style, or is the equipment not really that relevant?
No, it's not that important. Like I've gone back and forth. Like when I started photography, I was wide angle only. Like I had the 16-35 for the first, 5, 6, 7 years and nothing else.
That's a telephoto lens, by the way.
This was before the 11 existed. And then, eventually I was like, got a little bit bored with that, and I wanted to try something new, like challenge myself. And I got a telezoom, like a prop, like 100-400. And I think now, like, I don't care too much about the equipment. Like I kind of jump between like a wide angle and a tele. Like I'm typically on the 14 millimeter or the 400 millimeter. Like it's never something in between. Like it's one extreme or the other. But no, at the end of the day, it comes back to like what inspires me in the scene. Like sometimes we can stand in the most photographed beach in the world, like in Skogsand here in Lofoten, really popular place. And then you can look, okay, we have a beautiful 14 millimeter composition that everyone is doing. But if you look at the mountain far in the back there's a little bit of light hitting the peak, or there's some interesting cloud, or there's something, a bird flying by, whatever it is. I, for some reason, love birds flying by. Then, switch over to the 400 millimeter and you're shooting a completely different photo. You go from the one popular extreme to like a really narrow scene that you wouldn't have seen
Mhm.
if you weren't really paying attention to the landscape or to the surroundings.
Yeah.
So like for me, switching away from the 14 to the 100-400
Mhm.
allowed me to start appreciating my surroundings in a new way, where I really started paying attention to the smaller details or the
Mhm.
further, like the distant details.
Mhm.
And I feel like that kind of, again, gave me a new boost, and I was inspired to create new work. But now, like, I feel again like I kind of fluctuate between the two
Mhm.
extremes, and I don't really care what equipment, like what brand it is, or
Mhm.
whatever I'm shooting with. It's just trying to find what speaks to me in this place, and I know that in my backpack I have the tools to be able to capture that. If that's a wide angle, if it's a long lens, or if it's a filter, whatever it
Mhm.
is, like I can capture whatever inspires me that moment.
Talk a little bit more about the photo education products and services that you offer, photo tours and maybe any ebooks, and of course, talk about your photo education website.
Yeah, so I started a website in 2016 called Capture Landscapes,
Mhm.
where my goal was to help educate aspiring photographers. So when I started photography, there was like, this is now what, 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Mhm.
There wasn't a whole lot of educational platforms. You didn't have internet in the same way as we do today.
Yeah.
So learning something was, I felt, more
Uh,
difficult. It's just trial and error.
mhm.
You get a camera, you shoot something, it doesn't work out, you try again. So I started writing on my personal blog or my
Mhm.
photo website, just some tutorials, mostly for my own sake, so that I
Mhm.
could remember how to do things. And eventually, this was getting more and more traction. People
Mhm.
were appreciating the work I put into it. So I was thinking, well, maybe I should take that away from my private website or my gallery website and put that over to a separate platform.
Mhm.
So since 2016, I think I've written about 350 articles on landscape photography, interviews with other photographers, and different inspirational content
Mhm.
that is for free. You can go and enjoy it. And then I have a handful of ebooks and courses that I'm selling as well. Everything related to landscape photography,
Mhm.
reasonable priced. And then, of course, the workshops. That
Yeah.
is the big part of what I'm doing here.
Well, Christian, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I definitely recommend everyone check out Christian's website and his photo education services, products, and platform. I will include links to all this in the description of this video. This has been a great conversation. I know I've learned a lot, and I think everyone in the audience will have learned a lot. So thank you very much, Christian, for coming on, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.